I'm sitting on my porch watching the sunset paint the Colorado mountains purple and gold, and my granddaughter Emma just asked me the question I've been waiting 60 years to answer. Grandma, how did you and Grandpa meet? I smile because this story is going to make her head spin. Well, sweetheart, your grandfather bought me at an auction for $1. Emma's eyes go wide as dinner plates. What? Don't look so scandalized. Sit down and I'll tell you how the worst day of my life became the beginning of the best one. My other grandchildren gather around, 5 of them total, ranging from 8 to 15. They think they know their Grandma Lydia, the woman who runs this ranch with an iron fist and a kind heart, the woman who can shoot a rifle better than most men and bake a pie that'll make you weep. They don't know that 60 years ago, I stood on an auction block with a burlap sack over my head while men threw rocks at me and called me trash. But they're about to find out. My name is Lydia Pearl Bracken, I began, and this is the story of how I went from being worth less than a bottle of whiskey to finding a love worth more than all the gold in California. 60 years ago, I was 23 years old and absolutely certain I was going to die. I wasn't always poor or desperate. In fact, I'd grown up with everything. Fine dresses, education, parties where governors and senators attended. My godfather was Governor Harrison himself. I married a man named Gabriel Bracken, heir to a mining fortune, and thought I'd live happily ever after in a mansion in Denver. I was wrong about everything. Gabriel was handsome and charming in public. In private, he was a monster. He gambled away fortunes, beat servants, and ran with a gang of criminals called the Skull Riders. But I didn't know the worst part until it was too late. He murdered my godfather, shot Governor Harrison in his own study, and made it look like a robbery. I found Gabriel burning his bloody shirt in our fireplace. When I confronted him, he smiled, and said, "Who do you think they'll believe, darling, a respected businessman or his hysterical wife?" Then he did something even worse. He framed me for the murder, used his connections, his money, his power. Within a week, I was arrested. The newspapers called me a scheming woman who'd killed her godfather for inheritance money. Society turned on me instantly. Ladies I'd had tea with crossed the street to avoid me. Men I danced with at balls called me evil. I spent 3 months in a cell waiting for trial. Then Gabriel's lawyers made a deal. Instead of hanging me, they'd transport me west to a work camp, exile instead of execution. It was all lies. Gabriel paid off the marshal. Instead of a work camp, I was sold to a traveling auctioneer named Silas Calloway, who specialized in broken goods, women with no families, no rights, no hope. That's how I ended up in Broken Ridge, Wyoming territory in January of 1888, standing on a wooden platform in the freezing cold with a burlap sack tied over my head. I couldn't see the crowd, but I could hear them and smell them and feel them. "What's wrong with this one?" someone yelled. "Hideous," Calloway shouted back. "Hideous! Face like a mule kicked her. But she's got a strong back and she can read and write. Make a decent housekeeper if you don't mind looking at her." It was all lies. I wasn't ugly, but the sack made sure nobody could verify that. It dehumanized me, made me less than human, just property. "Open bid at $5, Calloway announced. Silence. $4? More silence. Something hit my shoulder, a rock, then another. Mud splatted against the sack. $3? Come on, gentlemen, she's at least $3. "She ain't worth a bottle of whiskey," someone shouted, and the crowd laughed. Standing there, unable to see, unable to defend myself, feeling rocks and mud and spit hitting me while men laughed, that was the moment I understood I'd become nothing, not a person, not even a name, just a thing to be mocked and discarded. I wanted to die, genuinely, truly wanted it to end right there. Then a voice cut through the jeering, quiet but somehow louder than all of them. $1. The crowd went silent. "What was that?" Calloway sounded annoyed. "I said $1. That's my bid." "Well, step up here where we can see you." I heard footsteps, heavy boots on wooden planks. "Well, I'll be damned," Calloway muttered. "Stryker Corbin. Haven't seen you in town since, 6 months? Thought you were dead." "Not yet. $1. Take it or keep her." $1 ain't even... "It's all I have. Take it or don't." A long pause. Then Calloway sighed. "Fine, she's yours, but don't come crying when you see what's under that sack." The crowd laughed again as rough hands untied the rope around my wrists. Someone, Stryker, I assumed, took my arm. His grip was firm, but not cruel. "Can you walk?" His voice was low, gravelly, like he didn't use it much. I nodded, unable to speak. He led me off the platform, through the jeering crowd, and away from the worst moment of my life. But I had no idea that the man who just bought me for $1, a man I couldn't even see, was about to save my life in ways I couldn't possibly imagine. We walked for what felt like hours. He didn't speak, didn't explain, just led me by the arm through snow and ice, my feet going numb in my thin shoes. Finally, when we were far from town, he stopped. "I'm going to remove the sack now," he said quietly. "Don't be afraid, I'm not going to hurt you." I stood perfectly still as he untied the burlap. It fell away and cold air hit my face. I blinked in the late afternoon light, seeing my surroundings for the first time in days. Mountains, snow, pine trees, and standing in front of me, a man who looked like he'd walked out of a ghost story. Stryker Corbin was tall, maybe 6'3", with broad shoulders and a face carved from hard living. Dark hair, dark beard, eyes the color of storm clouds. He wore worn leather and faded denim, and he looked at me like he was seeing a person, not property. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. "You're not ugly," he said finally. I almost laughed, almost cried. "No, I'm not." Figured. Calloway's a liar and a cheat. He turned and started walking. "Come on, storm's coming." "Wait," I called. "Where are we going?" "My cabin. You'll freeze to death out here in those clothes." "Why? Why did you buy me?" He stopped but didn't turn around. "Because nobody else would, and I know what it's like to be worth nothing to everyone." Something in his voice told me he meant it. This man understood. "What's your name?" he asked. Lydia Pearl." "Well, Lydia Pearl, you got two choices. Come with me and live, or stay here and freeze. Your decision." I looked back toward Broken Ridge, toward the men who'd thrown rocks at me, toward a world that decided I was worthless. Then I looked at this strange, quiet man who'd spent his last dollar to save me. I chose life. "Lead the way, Mr. Corbin." The barest hint of a smile crossed his face. "Just Stryker." We walked for 2 more hours through deepening snow. The cabin appeared like something from a dream. Small, sturdy, smoke rising from the chimney. Inside was simple but clean. One room with a stone fireplace, a bed, a table, shelves of supplies. "You take the bed," he said immediately. "I'll sleep on the floor." "That's not—" "I insist." He started building up the fire. "You're half frozen. Get warm. There's stew in the pot." I sat by the fire, shaking from cold and shock and exhaustion. He ladled stew into a bowl and handed it to me. It was simple, rabbit and vegetables, but it was the first hot food I'd had in days. "Why?" I finally asked. "Why spend your last dollar on me? You don't know me. I could be dangerous. I could be exactly what they said, a murderer." Stryker sat across from me, his back against the wall. "Are you?" "No." "Didn't think so." He stared into the fire. "I haven't talked to another person in 6 months. Been hiding up here trying to forget everything. Then I came into town today for supplies and saw you on that platform, and I couldn't walk away. Couldn't let them treat you like that." "But your last dollar was just money. You're a person." Seemed like an easy choice. I looked at this man, this stranger who'd saved me, and felt something crack open inside my chest. Hope. Actual, real hope. "There's a $5,000 bounty on my head. I'm wanted for murdering the governor of Colorado, my own godfather. Everyone thinks I did it, but I didn't. My husband, Gabriel, did, and he framed me for it. I expected him to react, to throw me out, to turn me in for the money. Instead, Stryker just nodded. Figured it was something like that. You don't get sold at auction in Broken Ridge unless someone powerful wants you disappeared. You're not going to turn me in? For $5,000? He almost smiled. "Lady, if I cared about money, I wouldn't be living in a cabin eating rabbit stew. I'd be down in Denver living in a mansion. Money's just money. But you're real, and you're scared, and you need help. So no, I'm not turning you in." I started crying. Couldn't help it. 6 months of terror and degradation and hopelessness came pouring out all at once. Stryker looked uncomfortable, but didn't leave, just sat there until I'd cried myself out. "Thank you," I whispered finally. "Thank you for seeing me as human." "That's all anyone really wants," he said, "to be seen." And right then, sitting in that cabin with a stranger who'd spent his last dollar to save me, I understood something important. Sometimes the poorest person in the room is the richest in the ways that actually matter. Now, before I tell you what happened next, and trust me, children, it gets wild, I need to ask you wonderful folks a favor. If you're enjoying this old woman's story about how a $1 auction led to 60 years of love, would you mind hitting that subscribe button? It helps me share these memories with people who appreciate them. Thank you kindly. You're sweeter than honey. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the cabin in the mountains. For 3 days, Stryker taught me how to survive. He showed me how to melt snow for water, how to skin a rabbit, how to load and fire his revolver, just in case, he said, how to read weather in the sky and tell directions by the stars. He never touched me inappropriately, never made demands, treated me with respect I hadn't received since before Gabriel showed his true colors. On the 4th night, over stew by the fire, I told him everything. About Gabriel, about the skull riders, about finding the bloody shirt, about being framed and arrested and sold like cattle. There's a man named Silas Calloway, I explained, the auctioneer. He keeps ledgers, records of every transaction, every payment, everything. If I could get those ledgers, I could prove Gabriel paid to have me disappeared, prove the whole conspiracy. Stryker was quiet for a long time. That's dangerous. I know. You could die trying. I know that too, but I can't run forever. Either I clear my name or I spend the rest of my life hiding. He looked at me with those storm gray eyes. Then we'll get the ledgers. We? You think I'm letting you go alone after I spent a whole dollar on you? The corner of his mouth twitched. That's a significant investment, Miss Pearl. I need to protect it. I almost laughed. That's the worst joke I've ever heard. I know. I'm out of practice. He stood and checked his rifle. We'll leave at first light. But Lydia, if we do this, the skull riders will come after us. Gabriel won't let you expose him. This will get bloody. I know. And you still want to do it? I thought about the burlap sack, the rocks, the laughter, the months in a cell, Gabriel's smile as he destroyed my life. Yes, I'm done running. Stryker nodded. Good, because I'm done hiding too. We left before dawn, 2 broken people about to take on a criminal empire with nothing but determination and 1 old rifle. Turned out, determination was enough. We snuck into Calloway's office in Broken Ridge while he was at the saloon, found the ledgers exactly where I'd hoped. Records of payments from Gabriel Bracken to Silas Calloway. Coded, but obvious. Proof of the entire conspiracy. We were halfway out of town when the shouting started. There! That's her! The murderess! The skull riders. 7 of them. Armed and mean. Run! Stryker shoved me toward the trees. I'll hold them. No! I'm not leaving you. Lydia, go! Gunfire erupted. Stryker returned fire, dropping 2 men immediately. But there were too many. We ran into the mountains with the gang right behind us. What followed was 3 days of the most brutal survival I've ever experienced. And children, I've experienced a lot. We climbed higher into the mountains than I thought possible, abandoned our supplies, hid in caves, ran through snow in the dark, lived on nothing but melted snow and determination. The skull riders were relentless. They knew these mountains. They wanted those ledgers, and they wanted me dead. On the 3rd day, they cornered us in a narrow canyon Stryker called the Throat. Rock walls on both sides, nowhere to run. Stay behind me, Stryker ordered, rifle raised. There's too many. I said stay behind me. They came at us from both ends. Gunfire echoed off the canyon walls. I grabbed Stryker's revolver and started shooting. Not well, but enough to make them take cover. Then I heard Stryker grunt and saw blood bloom across his shoulder. He'd been shot, protecting me. No! I caught him as he stumbled. No, 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 no! Run! Lydia, leave me and run! Absolutely not! I dragged him behind a boulder, rage flooding through me. These men had chased us for days. They'd shot the one person who'd shown me kindness. They wanted to silence me, to help Gabriel escape justice. I was done being hunted. I picked up Stryker's rifle. My hands were steady. My aim was not. But I was angry, and anger makes you dangerous. I stepped out behind the boulder and started firing. Caught 1 skull rider in the leg, another in the shoulder. The rest scattered, looking for cover. You want me? I screamed. Come get me! They tried, and I made them regret it. I won't lie to you children and say I was a hero. I was terrified. My hand shook. I missed more shots than I hit. But I was fighting for something, for justice, for survival, for the man bleeding behind me who'd spent his last dollar because he couldn't stand to see another human being degraded. When the smoke cleared, 3 skull riders were dead. 4 had fled, and Stryker was unconscious, bleeding badly from his shoulder. The tables had turned. Now I had to save him. I tore strips from my dress and bound his wound as tight as I could. Then I did something I didn't think I could do. I dragged a 6'3", 200-pound man through the wilderness for 4 days. I caught rabbits and snares Stryker had taught me to make, melted snow, made broth, fed him when he was delirious with fever, cauterized his wound with a knife heated in fire while he screamed and I cried, refused to let him die. "You saved me," I whispered on the fourth night when his fever finally broke. "Now I'm saving you. We're even." He smiled weakly. "Best dollar I ever spent." On the fifth day, I dragged him into the town of Silverton, and that's where everything finally came together. The sheriff of Silverton was Stryker's brother. I didn't know that until Colt Blackwood saw us stumbling into town, me supporting Stryker, both of us covered in blood and dirt, and shouted, "Stryker!" Turns out, the Corbin brothers had been estranged for 6 years. Stryker had blamed himself for his parents' deaths in a fire and disappeared into the mountains. Colt had been searching for him ever since. But that's a different story. What matters is that Colt got Stryker medical treatment, took custody of me instead of arresting me, and listened to everything. Looked at Calloway's ledgers, believed me. I'll wire the territorial marshal. We'll do this right. Legal. Public trial. 3 weeks later, I stood in a courtroom in Denver. Gabriel sat at the defendant's table, confident and smug. He thought his money and connections would save him, like always. But this time was different. I testified clearly about finding the bloody shirt, about his confession, about being framed. Stryker provided Calloway's ledgers showing payments. Witnesses came forward. Servants Gabriel had abused, business partners he cheated, members of the Skull Riders who turned on him to save themselves. The evidence was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 10 minutes. 10! They came back with a verdict so fast the judge was surprised. Guilty on all counts. Gabriel's face went white, then red. Then he started screaming, calling me a liar, calling the jury fools, threatening everyone. They dragged him out of the courtroom in chains. I stood there, cleared of all charges, my reputation restored, my inheritance returned. Free. Completely, truly free. But when I walked out of that courthouse, I didn't feel relieved. I felt like empty. Like I'd been fighting for so long that now that the fight was over, I didn't know what to do. Stryker was waiting on the courthouse steps, his arm in a sling. "Congratulations," he said simply. "Thank you for everything." "What are you going to do now?" Good question. I could reclaim my old life, the mansion, the parties, the society that had turned on me. I had money now, status. I could go anywhere, be anyone. I looked at the city. Then I looked at the mountains in the distance. Then I looked at Stryker, this quiet, broken man who'd spent his last dollar on a hooded woman at an auction because he couldn't stand to see another human being degraded. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a silver dollar. Held it up. "I'd like to buy something," I said. Stryker looked confused. "What?" "A partner. Someone to share the mountains with. Someone who sees me as human, not as property or a prize. Someone who understands that the best things in life can't be bought with money, but sometimes they cost exactly $1. Understanding dawned on his face. He smiled. Really smiled for the first time since I'd met him. "Deal." He took the dollar. "But fair warning, I'm a terrible cook and I snore. And I'm wanted for murder. Oh wait, not anymore." I laughed. "I guess we'll just have to figure it out as we go." We rode back to the mountains that day, not as owner and property, not as rescuer and rescued, but as partners, as equals, as two people who'd been broken and had somehow put each other back together. And that, I tell my wide-eyed grandchildren, is how my grandfather bought me for $1, and I bought him right back. Emma is crying. That's the most beautiful story I've ever heard. It's also true, every word. I point to the mantle above the fireplace. See that silver dollar in the frame? That's the one I gave my grandfather. He kept it for 60 years. "Where's the one he spent on you?" my grandson Tommy asks. I smile. That one's buried with him. When my grandfather died last year, I put it in his pocket. Figured he'd earned it.